Hello and welcome back to Nerd News Today Toy Fair 2021. And now we're about to talk some toy photography today. And now joining us on the other side of the screen, all the way from the Great White North, we've got from Duane Shoots Toys, Duane himself, Mr. Duane Perera. Duane, how's it going?
I'm doing great, and yeah, thanks for inviting me on to chat toys. I'm excited.
I'm a huge fan of your work. I love what you're doing. It's some amazing photography. We're going to talk all about it today and highlight a few specific shots as well as a few other things about your photography. But first things first, Duane, what was your favorite toy as a kid growing up?
Um, Gosh, I had so many favorites. I was really big into. Well, let me start by actually mentioning the first toy that I can remember, and that was the Skeletor, Masters of the Universe. I have a photo of myself holding that toy, and that's probably my first memory as a child of having toys. But I was also, big into Transformers, GI Joe, Ninja Turtles. I went through all of them, so yeah, there's a whole bunch.
So, when did you discover your passion for photography?
Photography in general, or toy photography
Yes, let's
specifically?
start with general photography and let's see how that road gets down to toy photography.
Yeah. So before I got into toy photography, I was just into mainly travel and landscape photography. So I started getting into that specifically, I'd say maybe 2000, late 2017. And, I was going around the city taking photos. I was traveling and doing photos overseas. And that, through that process, I was learning how to use a camera. And, in taking photos and learning how to use a camera, I would spend a lot of time on YouTube, right? And I was watching all kinds of tutorials trying to figure out how to use this camera and get the most out of my photos. And that eventually led to toy photography because I discovered this one video of a toy photographer who was taking photos of model cars and making them look realistic. And that was the first time I had seen something like that. And I was just blown away by it. And I did a little bit of digging and eventually found this whole community of action figure photographers. And instantly I was hooked, right? And I just started, you know, well, at that point, I hadn't been collecting figures. I had sold all my childhood toys, so I had to go back and buy a whole bunch of new action figures, and then I just started getting into it, and it just snowballed from there.
Now, were you a professional photographer by trade, or is it just something that you did as a hobby?
No. I was just a hobbyist. Yeah.
So, you mentioned that you weren't really collecting for a while. What did you start collecting? What kind of lit the fuse again?
Just toy photography, really. So like I had a lot of toys as a kid. And then when I got into my teenage years, we pretty much sold everything, right? So I didn't really hang on to any of those childhood toys. And I had been seeing images of some of these, Hot Toys figures
Oh, yeah, that'll do it.
online. And yeah, and they looked absolutely amazing, but they're really expensive, right? They're like $300, $400 a piece sometimes, right? And at that point, before I got into the toy photography, I don't know, I couldn't justify spending that much money on a figure if I wasn't, if it's just going to sit on a shelf. I just, I didn't have a lot of money to spend on toys at that time. But then, I got into the photography, and then I realized, these action figures are like an investment, really, right? So, because, I can buy them and then create really interesting and fun art with them, and especially the high end figures, they tend to hold their value pretty well. So at that point, then I started, getting into these Hot Toys and Marvel Legends and some of the Mattel WWE figures, NECA figures, all kinds of stuff. So it was really toy photography that got me back into the action figures.
That's really cool to hear that you're able to kind of combine those two things together. And
Yeah.
yeah, since just kind of mentioned those WWE Mattels in the background, I was marveling at those before we started. Yeah, let's talk about one of the shots you just recently posted on your Instagram, which was that photo of a lot of the WWE legends playing with their Hasbro figures. And I love the story behind how you put that all together. So can you kind of just talk to us about how that shoot happened?
Yeah, that was a really fun project for me. I'd say I'm a casual wrestling fan in the sense that I used to watch when I was a kid, late 80s, early 90s, that golden era. I was probably 9 years old, 8, 9 years old. And, I haven't really watched much recently, but I love that era with, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Ted DiBiase, Jake the Snake, those kind of guys. And I had recently got well, not recently, maybe about 6, 7 months ago, got a 3D printer. And I was, you know, looking around on the internet trying to find really interesting things to print. And then I just came across these little Mattel or these old school Hasbro uh, wrestling figures, right? And you know, I just thought, okay, maybe you can print one of these and then shrink them down into a small size. And so that's what I did. I made these like little miniature Hasbro figures, and then I customized a little miniature Hasbro ring, and that, you know, that classic blue ring, and printed them out and made a little project out of it, and then set up these Mattel action figures and had them playing with the little Hasbro toys in the Hasbro ring, so in sort of a backstage environment. So it was a really fun project for me.
Yeah, I love that photo. It's just so hilarious. Also, it's just so much fun into itself. You don't happen to have the ring of those minifigures around, do you? I'd love to see those.
So this is the ring itself. Uh, my camera isn't that great, my webcam, but let me grab this guy over here so you can see how it scales with the Mattel figures. And these are the little Hasbro figures, and they actually have a little bit of articulation. You know, the arms move up and down. And yeah, I've got a whole bunch of them here. Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect, Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, sorry, my webcam isn't that great. It's not really picking it up, but yeah. So that's the size of the figures relative to the Mattel.
So I love that photo, and you did another one also a little bit earlier, and you've done a bunch of things with wrestlers, but you did another one earlier that actually used the real Jax figures, because Jax did a whole micro line of wrestlers as well. I think
Yeah,
that was with Michelangelo, in fact, playing with those
yeah,
Jax
that
figures,
was
right?
with this Michelangelo figure. So that's a quarter scale NECA movie turtle, and the Jax microaggression figures, they scale relatively well with that. So that was my first endeavor into like building like a little ring. That one I made out of foam board and a little bit of polymer clay. This one was 3D printed. But yeah, it's fun. Like, you know, I haven't done too many wrestling photos. Like I'd say maybe, you know, 4 or 5 of them altogether. But it's always fun just to play around and experiment with crafting new and interesting things.
So I think one of the first photos I ever saw of yours was LeBron James eating some tacos, and I know you hand sculpted all this out of polymer clay too. So is that something you'd always done as well? Were you always sculpting and making things?
You know what? Like I've just been learning as I've gotten into toy photography. So I had very little experience with sculpting and painting and all that. So it's just been a matter of just picking up little skills with every photo that I do. And yeah, now the new thing is 3D printing. So I'm doing a lot of that, and it's fun. I love crafting.
And you have so many photos where you've got your toys playing with other toys. It's very meta. It's very much Inception. It's a really
Yeah.
fun concept. What's drawing you to do that and go to that theme again and again?
It's just fun to do. I mean, part of it is just the aspect of creating the miniature versions of those toys. A lot of them I've made myself. Some of them I buy, but that's fun. And it's just what I like to do with a lot of my photos is take characters and put them in situations that you wouldn't normally think of them being in, right? So like when you see like a lot of these wrestling action figures, you see people taking photos of them, but 99% of the photos are of those wrestlers in the ring wrestling, right? Which is fun. It's cool. But like for me, I like to take them and put them in very different situations, right? I did one shot. I don't know if you saw it, but I had some wrestlers playing Wheel of Fortune, spinning
I
the
did see
wheel.
that. I love that shot.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's. I was gonna actually ask you about some of those other shots too, because you've got like all these photos that have such a sense of humor in all of them, and I
yeah,
think that kind of almost overshadows all these elements that you're doing, that you're making behind the scenes to really make these photos work. So like
yeah,
you've got Mike Tyson in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you got Ninja
yeah.
Turtles eating Dunkaroos and playing Game Boy, you have Power Rangers in the office, working hard or hardly working. I don't know which one. And it kind of leads me to my question here too: is why not just take serious photos? Why not just treat these toys as, the themes, whatever their genres from? Why not just do that? Why go in this direction?
I could, it's just like this is just the style that I like creating. I mean, I'm a lighthearted guy. I like creating cartoonish, fun photos. And like I said before, it's just a matter of taking these figures and putting them in situations that you wouldn't really imagine them in, right? Because we've seen them so many times in those regular situations, right? So I'm just a fan of putting them in unconventional environments.
Now, you've also been doing some stuff with like small card. You've got a photo of Captain N where he's like got a bunch of game boxes all over the place.
Yeah.
You've got Michelangelo playing with Pokemon cards most recently, and there's one I really like with the DBZ guys, and they're playing with Pogs.
Oh
That's a
yeah,
lot of work
yeah.
because you're actually hand cutting out all these cards, all these Pogs, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's not necessarily hard work. It's just tedious, you know. It's a lot of little cutting, especially when they're that small. The pogs were kind of challenging because they're circular, so you know, I actually had to use a hole punch to kind of cut out each pog individually. But it's a lot of work, but it's fun, you know. Like I think one of the things that I keep coming back to in my photography is just reliving my childhood. You know, a lot of my photos deal with nostalgia from the 80s and from the 90s, right? So it's just there's just a warm fuzzy feeling that I get when I get to, you know, recreate those memories.
So I know a lot of folks want to hear about the behind the scenes process, how you take these photos. So let's just start with how long it normally takes you to set up a photo, because a lot of these things are requiring you to make all sorts of stuff. So what's the typical, I guess, let's call this prep time to get a shoot ready?
You know, that really varies from shot to shot. It depends primarily on the complexity of the scene and how many props I need to make for it. In some situations, I'm able to work with stuff that I've made in the past or I've bought. But if I'm creating everything from scratch, I'd say actually from start to finish, you know, it could be 3 days, 4 days, all the way up to 6 or 7 days to complete a shot. It really depends. And now recently I've started trying to get a little bit more in depth with the documentation of the process. So I'm starting to post more in-depth videos on YouTube. And once you start recording videos and documenting the process, that slows everything down, right? Because you got to set up a camera and then, you know, record yourself cutting and doing whatever, right? So sometimes, you know, some of the projects with the video editing and the recording, it can take, you know, over a week to do. So it varies, but yeah, I'd say, you know, a few days to get everything done.
So it's basically a lot of prep time for what will ultimately add up to like, a few minutes of actually taking the photo, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, the photo itself doesn't take that long. Once I have the lighting and everything set up, you know, I take the photo, but then even after I take the photo, there's an editing process. So you got to clean up the blemishes. One of the things that I like to do personally, just a personal choice, personal preference, is to edit out the articulation points on the figures just to make them look more lifelike. Some people prefer to leave them in there so they look like toys, but I prefer to take them out just to make them look more lifelike, right? So things like that, you know, it adds to the editing time, and you know, but the actual, you know, taking of the photo isn't that time consuming. It's just all the prep work, the building of the little props and setting things up. Right now, I'm in the process of making a little Super Nintendo themed shot, sort of like a retail scenario, and I had to make about, I think, 40 little individual Super Nintendo game boxes. So it's time consuming because you have to first find the scans of the original boxes, then you got to, you know, edit them and shrink them down, and then you got to cut them up and paste them together, and it's time consuming.
It's a
But I
lot of
enjoy it.
precision work to do there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, usually what I do is I just you know, turn on a podcast or watch some old, you know, episodes of some TV show or something like that, and then just sit there and just cut and craft away, and the time goes by pretty quickly.
So let's get super nerdy here now, Duane. What camera are you using? What lens are you using? What kind of light setup are you using? How's the whole scenario play out?
Well, I'm actually using a relatively old camera. It's the Panasonic GH3.
Nice.
And
I'm a Panasonic guy myself.
oh, really cool. What kind of camera do you have?
I'm still using a GH2 and a GH4 right now.
Oh, okay, both. I'm
So
right in
together
the
we
middle.
basically make like, the actual continuity to the cameras.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah, so I'm using the GH3. I bought that originally because it's supposed to be pretty good for video.
I
So I
can
wanted to
attest
get
to that.
into.
I've shot a lot of films with that camera.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to get into originally like travel videography and that kind of thing. But yeah, I bought it, and it was relatively cheap when I got it, and I haven't really you know, seen a need to upgrade yet to doing the job. So I got that, and then lenses. I've got a few. I've got a 14 millimeter pancake lens, so that's a relatively wide angle lens, and then I have an attachment that you can put onto that lens, which is a fisheye lens. And I love that lens. I use it quite a bit. I actually use it in that Pokemon shot with Michelangelo. just because it creates, I don't know, a little bit of visual distortion, but it also just gives you a really cool looking image. So I use that a lot. And occasionally I have a 25 millimeter lens that I'll use quite a bit. So I just kind of go back and forth between all those lenses. And lighting, very simple. I actually have some, let's see here, just a regular desk lamp here. Oh, a couple of these, and one big soft box behind me just to add a little bit of extra light. And that's it. It's kind of like a low budget lighting setup that I just kind of hacked together. Nothing special. And what else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I also have, I guess, as I mentioned before, with the crafting element, I do a fair bit of 3D printing. So I have a Creality Ender 3 Pro 3D printer that I use quite a bit to make a lot of my miniatures. So those are the main things that I'm using.
And as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and you're doing some really ingenious things here to make your shots. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do like serious photography because they think it's going to be such a big financial investment. But the lenses you're using, even they're like not the most expensive lenses either. GH2 is still pretty out of date camera now, but it still does great shots. So like really, it sounds like just about anybody could jump into this, and it's still kind of an entry level thing. You're not using like a Leica camera or a Mamiya, anything like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, like I think a lot of people when they're first starting, they get stuck up on the idea of, having to own like this high-end camera in order to do, photography. But really, like, you can technically do photography with your cell phone, if you just set things up in the proper way, right? So I would say just get something half decent and just study it and practice. Keep experimenting with different lighting techniques, because lighting is a massive part of it, right? Just getting that right. And yeah, like, I mean, I don't know how old the GH3 is, but it's not the newest camera out there. They've already made the GH4 and the GH5, right? So yeah, it works well for me.
I think it's really great advice too. Now, I see that there's a lot of shots that reuse the same characters again. Like we mentioned, the Turtles. You've got a lot of the same basketball players that you use again and again. One of my favorites is Prince. So I'm wondering, is there like a storyline in your head for all these photos? Does everybody live in this one universe?
You know what? The ideas, I feel fortunate in that ideas come to me relatively easily. So whenever I get an idea, I'll just write it down in a text file, right? So I have this text file with maybe like 150 different possible scenarios. And then just whenever I feel like working on a photo, I'll go to that text file and then pick something out and then do something with it. So a lot of the scenarios that I create are based upon those same characters, because I just keep on getting ideas about them, right? But I don't know, I wouldn't say they all live in the same universe, but these are the figures that I have, so these are the ones that I work with.
So not necessarily a Duane Shoots Toys cinematic universe, just kind of what's around.
Yeah, pretty much. Who knows? Maybe I can intertwine all the scenarios together into like one joint storyline. Who knows?
I mean, I just want to see Prince, like, tell the Turtles what the five fingers said to the face and have them in a fight scene or something. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And it seems like you also mix a lot of other things that you like into your photos. Like there's elements of photography, of shoe collecting, of like hip hop music. It seems like, are you like putting a lot of these things that you like into the photos as well? Or is it just kind of like you let the characters tell you what the photos are going to be?
Oh, most of my scenes incorporate things that I like, right? I mean, I don't think I could work on a photo if it was about something that I didn't enjoy, right? So yeah, I'm really big into music. Actually, before I got into photography, that was mainly what I did, making beats and music production. But yeah, a lot of music references, sneaker collecting, video games, all those things are things that I'm passionate about. So I love just incorporating those into my shots. And, again, coming back to taking characters and putting them in unconventional situations, right? I'll take like a Ninja Turtle and have him play, a video game, or, have Goku from Dragon Ball in the studio making beats or something like that, right? So it's all across the board for me, but it's all like based on stuff that I enjoy.
So to date, which photo has been the most challenging for you to take?
Um, that's a difficult question, because like sometimes when I'm taking a photo, the challenge might be setting up the lighting in the right way. Other times it may be creating a prop that's challenging. Other times it could be just getting the figures to stand or, maintain a certain pose. So I don't know if there's one that's been more difficult than the others. It's just been different levels of difficulty. So I did a vinyl shot with Spider-Man in a record store, searching for vinyl records. And that shot wasn't necessarily difficult, but it was very, very time consuming because I had to make like 500 miniature vinyl record covers. So that's the kind of stuff I encounter. Just different. Every photo has its own challenge, right? Sometimes it's just plowing through and making a whole bunch of little items. Other times it's just setting things up or building a certain prop. So it varies. I know it's not really answering your question, but it's difficult to pick a single photo that's more difficult than the others.
So the artist always appears somewhere in his work. So which photo do you think represents Duane the most?
They all do. They all do, because like every photo that I've made has had some kind of reference to my life, whether it's a childhood hobby that I had, playing with certain toys or video games, or collecting sneakers or making music. Like every photo has a little bit of me inside of it, right? And that's what makes it so enjoyable to me, right? It's just me expressing myself. So again, I don't know if I can answer that question, because it's just I'm in every single photo that I do, pretty much.
I think that's a good answer, though. I think it kind of is apparent that you are in all those photos. I think that counts. And maybe one day there'll be one that's like super duper personal, and who knows? We'll wait for the toy god to tell us when that happens.
Yeah, well, maybe one day I'll make my own action figure and then take a shot of myself.
There you go. Yeah, how come you haven't done that yet?
Yeah, eventually.
That's like the final frontier now, is getting yourself in all these scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for folks who'd like to check out your photography, where can they go to follow you and see more of your work?
I'm on all social media under the handle Duane Shoots Toys, mainly Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all those platforms I'm on there.
And we should add also that you just recently did some stuff for Hasbro too, right? Which is a pretty great deal.
Yeah. They sent over the Lord Draken figure from Power Rangers. So they asked me to do something with it, and I created a little scene of that figure buying figures of himself at a store. So that was kind of fun. I made a little conveyor belt for the shopping aisle, and then made miniature versions of the packaging. So yeah, it was a fun project to work on.
Well, I hope Hasbro contacts you to do that more often. I hope some other toy companies get on that too, like Mattel. Are you paying attention? He's doing some great stuff here at the Wrestling Figures. Get on that, Mattel.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm really excited about some of the figures that they got coming up too. Like I said before, I'm a fan of the old school stuff. So they just announced that Legends Series 9, and
Yep.
Ted DiBiase is probably one of my favorite personalities from that era. So they have that figure with the hard molded black suit, and then the white variant. Oh, I'm really excited about that. But the only issue is that that's a Target exclusive, and we don't have Target in Canada anymore. So hopefully they'll come to another store. We still have Toys R Us, so sometimes the Target exclusives go there, and sometimes they go to other stores. But I'll eventually get my hands on it, and I'm super excited about that line.
Well, listen, you got Toys R Us still there, so I mean, we'll do a trade here. I'll get you that DiBiase. You get me some Toys R Us exclusives. We'll be all happy.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, Duane, thank you so much. Everybody go check out Duane Shoots Toys. We'll have links for everything, of course, in the description below. So yeah, Duane, great photography. Can't wait to see what you do next. Please keep up the great work. That's the least I can say. Keep up the most excellent, awesome work. How about that?
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you. And everybody out there who's still watching, stick around, because we've got more nerd news today. Toy Fair 2021 coming right up.